So it is with life. What matters is not how long the acting lasts, but how good it is. It is not important at what point you stop. Stop whatever you will. Only make sure that you round it off with a good ending. Letter number 78. I am all the more sorry to hear of the trouble you are having with constant catarrh and the spells of feverishness which go with it when it becomes protracted to the point of being chronic, because this kind of ill health is something I have experienced myself. In its early stages, I refused to let it bother me, being still young enough then to adopt a defiant attitude to sickness and put up with hardships. But eventually I succumbed to it altogether. Reduced to a state of complete emaciation, I had arrived at a point where the catarrhal discharges were virtually carrying me away with them altogether. On many an occasion I felt an urge to cut my life short there and then, and was only held back by the thought of my father, who had been the kindest of fathers to me, and was then in his old age. Having in mind not how bravely I was capable of dying, but how far from bravely he was capable of bearing the loss, I commanded myself to live. There are times when even to live is an act of bravery. Let me tell you the things that provided me with consolation in those days, telling you to begin with that the thoughts which brought me this peace of mind had all the effect of medical treatment. Comforting thoughts, provided they are not of a discreditable kind, contribute to a person's cure. Anything which raises his spirits benefits him physically as well. It was my Stoic studies that really saved me. For the fact that I was able to leave my bed and was restored to health, I give the credit to philosophy. I owe her, and it is the least of my obligations to her, my life, but my friends also made a considerable contribution to my return to health. I found a great deal of relief in their cheering remarks, in the hours they spent at my bedside, and in their conversations with me. There is nothing, my good Lucilius, quite like the devotion of one's friends for supporting one in illness and restoring one to health, or for dispelling one's anticipation and dread of death. I even came to feel that I could not really die when these were the people I would leave surviving me, or perhaps I should say I came to think I would continue to live because of them, if not among them. For it seemed to me that in death I would not be passing away, but passing on my spirit to them. These things gave me the willingness to help my own recovery and to endure all the pain. It is quite pathetic, after all, if one has put the will to die behind one, to be without the will to live. There, then, are your remedies. The doctor will be telling you how much walking you should do, how much exercise you should take. He will be telling you not to overdo the inactivity, as is the tendency with invalids, and recommending reading aloud to exercise the breathing, its passages and reservoir being the areas affected. He will recommend that you take a trip by sea and derive some stimulation for the internal organs from the gentle motion of the boat. He will prescribe a diet for you and tell you when to make use of wine as restorative and when to give it up in case it starts you coughing or aggravates your cough. My own advice to you, and not only in the present illness but in your whole life as well, is this. Refuse to let the thought of death bother you. Nothing is grim when we have escaped that fear. There are three upsetting things about any illness: the fear of dying, the physical suffering, and the interruption of our pleasures. I've said enough about the first, but will just say this, that the fear is due to the facts of nature, not of illness. Illness has actually given many people a new lease of life. The experience of being near to death has been their preservation. You will die not because you are sick, but because you are alive. That end still awaits you when you have been cured. In getting well again, you may be escaping some ill health, but not death. And now let us go back and deal with the disadvantage which really does belong to illness, the fact that it involves considerable physical torments. These are made bearable by their intermittency, for when pain is at its most severe, the very intensity finds means of ending it. Nobody can be in acute pain and feel it for long. Nature, in her unlimited kindness to us, has so arranged things as to make pain either bearable or brief. The severest pains have their seat in the most attenuated parts of the body, Any area of slight dimensions, like a tendon or a joint, causes excruciating agony when trouble arises within its small confines. But these parts of our anatomy go numb very quickly, the pain itself giving rise to a loss of all sensation of pain, either because the life force is impaired by being held up in its natural circulation and so loses its active power, the power which enables it to give us warning of pain, or because the diseased secretions, no longer able to drain away, become self-obliterated and deprive the areas they have congested of sensation. Thus, gout in the feet or the hands, or any pain in the vertebrae or tendons, has intermittent lulls when it has dulled the area it is torturing. These are all cases in which the distress is caused by the initial twinges, and the violence of the pain disappears as time goes on, the suffering ending in a state of insensibility. The reason why pain in an eye or ear or a tooth is exceptionally severe is the fact that it develops in a limited area, and indeed this applies just as much to pains in the head. Nevertheless, if its intensity goes beyond a certain point, it is turned into a state of dazed stupefaction. So there is the comforting thing about extremities of pain. If you feel it too much, you are bound to stop feeling it. What in fact makes people who are morally unenlightened upset by the experience of physical distress is the failure to acquire the habit of contentment with the spirit. They have instead been preoccupied by the body. That is why a man of noble and enlightened character separates body from spirit, and has just as much to do with the former, the frail and complaining part of our nature, as is necessary and no more, and a lot to do with the better, the divine element. But it's hard having to do without pleasures we're used to, having to give up food and go thirsty as well as hungry. Tiresome it is in the first stages of abstinence. Later, as the organs of appetite decline in strength with exhaustion, the cravings die down. Thereafter the stomach becomes fussy, unable to stand things it could never have enough of before. The desires themselves die away, and there is nothing harsh about having to do without things for which we have ceased to have any craving. Another point is that every pain leaves off altogether, or at least falls off in intensity from time to time. Moreover, one can guard against its arrival, and employ drugs to forestall it, just as it is coming on. For every pain, or at least every pain with a habit of regular recurrence, gives one advance warning of its coming. In illness, the suffering is always bearable so long as you refuse to be affected by the ultimate threat. So do not go out of your way to make your troubles any more tiresome than they are, and burden yourself with fretting. Provided that one's thinking has not been adding anything to it, pain is a trivial sort of thing. If, by contrast, you start giving yourself encouragement, saying to yourself, "It's nothing, or nothing much anyway, let's stick it out, it'll be over presently," then in thinking it a trivial matter, you will be ensuring that it actually is. Everything hangs on one's thinking. The love of power or money or luxurious living are not the only things which are guided by popular thinking. We take our cue from people's thinking, even in the way we feel pain. A man is as unhappy as he has convinced himself he is, and complaining away about one's sufferings after they are over, you know the kind of language. No one has ever been in such a bad state. The torments and hardships I endured, no one thought I would recover. The number of times I was given up for lost by the family, the number of times I was despaired of by the doctors. A man on the rack isn't torn with pain the way I was. Is something I think should be banned. Even if all this is true, it is past history. What's the good of dragging up sufferings which are over, of being unhappy now just because you were then? What is more, doesn't everyone add a good deal to his tale of hardships and deceive himself as well in the matter? Besides, there is a pleasure in having succeeded in enduring something, the actual enduring of which was very far from pleasant. When some trouble or other comes to an end, the natural thing is to be glad. There are two things, then, the recollecting of trouble in the past as well as the fear of troubles to come, that I have to root out. The first is no longer any concern to me, and the second has yet to be so. And when a man is in the grip of difficulties, he should say, "There may be pleasure in the memory of even these events one day." He should put his whole heart into the fight against them. If he gives way before them, he will lose the battle. If he exerts himself against them, he will win. What in fact most people do is pull down on their own heads what they should be holding up against. When something is in imminent danger of falling on you, the pressure of it bearing heavily on you, it will only move after you and become an even greater weight to support if you back away from it. If instead you stand your ground, willing yourself to resist, it will be forced back. Look at the amount of punishment that boxers and wrestlers take to the face and the body generally. They will put up nonetheless with any suffering in their desire for fame, and will undergo it all not merely in the course of fighting, but in preparing for their fights as well. Their training in itself